She sits there in her designer dress, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, a smile playing at the corners of her lips like she's posing for a glamour shot instead of facing 53 felony charges. This 32-year-old former high school teacher actually believes her looks will get her out of this. That batting her eyelashes and playing innocent will somehow erase the mountain of evidence against her. Y'all, she's charged with identity theft, fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. She stole from students, from colleagues, from her own family. Over $470,000 gone. And here's the thing that'll blow your mind. She documented everything. Every purchase, every vacation, every designer bag, all over social media while her victims struggled to pay rent. This whole case is like watching a train wreck in slow motion. You can't look away. The prosecutors have her dead to rights. The evidence is overwhelming. Her own text messages confess to the crimes, but she thinks she's special, that the rules don't apply to someone who looks like her. And what this judge tells her, it's the reality check heard around the nation. Listen, investigating these cases takes time, and understanding the psychology behind someone like Rachel Morrison requires us to go back to the beginning. Who is Rachel Morrison? And how does someone go from trusted educator to criminal mastermind? Let's rewind to where it all began. Rachel Ann Morrison was born on March 15, 1991, in Riverside, California. Middle-class family, two parents who worked hard, an older brother who pretty much walked the straight and narrow. According to her family, Rachel was always the golden child, honor roll student, cheerleading captain, homecoming queen her senior year, the girl who seemed to have it all together. But here's the thing, and this is important. People who knew Rachel from back then remember something else. A girl who was obsessed with appearances, who'd throw a fit if she didn't get the newest designer bag for her birthday, who'd cry and manipulate her parents until they gave in. Her high school boyfriend, speaking to investigators years later, said something chilling. He said Rachel once told him, "Pretty girls don't have to follow the same rules as everyone else." Let that sink in. She was 17 when she said that, already believing that her looks were a free pass through life. Rachel attended California State University, San Bernardino, majored in elementary education with a minor in psychology. On paper, perfect future teacher material. In reality, that's where the pattern really started. Y'all, she racked up $23,000 in credit card debt before she even graduated. Shopping sprees, spring break trips to Cabo, bottles at clubs she couldn't afford. Her roommate junior year, Amanda Chen, later told investigators that Rachel would forge Amanda's signature on checks. Small amounts at first, $20 here, $50 there. Amanda noticed but didn't report it. She felt sorry for Rachel, believed her sob stories about needing money for textbooks or groceries. That's how Rachel operated. That's how she always operated. She'd find kind people, empathetic people, and she'd exploit that kindness until there was nothing left. In 2013, at 22 years old, Rachel landed her first teaching position at Meadowbrook Elementary in Moreno Valley, California. Third-grade teacher. Starting salary $48,000 a year. Now most people would be thrilled. Good benefits, summers off, making a difference in kids' lives. But for Rachel, this was nowhere near enough to fund the lifestyle she wanted. See, Rachel had already created this Instagram persona. The glamorous teacher, designer everything, exotic vacations during every school break, a lifestyle that would require 6 figures minimum. According to financial records obtained by prosecutors, Rachel was spending an average of $12,000 per month. $12,000 on a take-home pay of maybe $3,000. The math ain't mathing, right? Her colleagues noticed. One teacher, Martha Rodriguez, who'd worked at Meadowbrook for 15 years, said Rachel always had the newest iPhone the day it dropped. Always wore different designer outfits. Never repeated a look. Where was the money coming from? That's what everyone wondered, but nobody asked. Because Rachel had this way of making you feel bad for even thinking she might be doing something wrong. In 2015, Rachel started dating Marcus Thompson, a youth counselor she met through work. By all accounts, Marcus was a good guy, worked with at-risk kids, volunteered at the local community center, had his life together. He was also completely blind to who Rachel really was, at least at first. Marcus told investigators that Rachel was the most charming person he'd ever met. She knew exactly what to say, how to make him feel special, how to make him feel like he was the only person in the world who understood her. Classic manipulation tactic. But about 6 months into their relationship, Marcus started noticing things. Red flags that he tried to ignore. Rachel would borrow his credit card just for gas and then spend $600 at Nordstrom. She'd take money from his wallet while he was sleeping. She once forged his signature on a loan application for $15,000. Y'all, when Marcus found out about the loan, Rachel cried. Said she was in trouble with some dangerous people. Said she needed the money to protect both of them. She lied. There were no dangerous people. She wanted a new car. Marcus broke up with her in early 2016. According to the police report he filed later, Rachel drained his checking account the day after the breakup. $7,400. Gone. And here's the wild part. Marcus didn't press charges. He was too embarrassed, too heartbroken, too convinced that somehow he'd failed her. This is textbook predatory behavior. Rachel knew how to pick victims who wouldn't fight back, who'd blame themselves instead of her. By 2017, Rachel had perfected her double life. At school, she was Miss Morrison, the teacher kids loved, the one who brought cupcakes for birthdays and stayed late to help struggling students, on weekends and evenings. She was someone else entirely. Bottle service at clubs, VIP sections, flying to Vegas every other month. Miami, New York, Dubai. Folks who followed her on social media thought she came from money, that maybe she had family money or a side business. The reality was much darker. According to court documents, Rachel's scheme worked like this. She'd befriend people, colleagues mostly, get close enough that they trusted her. Then she'd get access to their personal information. Sometimes they'd give it willingly. She'd offer to help with their taxes or organize a group vacation. Other times, she'd straight up steal it. Photograph driver's licenses when people left their purses in the teacher's lounge. Write down social security numbers from HR documents she wasn't supposed to access. Then she'd open credit cards in their names, take out loans, even file fraudulent tax returns. Over 37 people, 37 different people. Some of them she'd worked with for years. Some of them considered her a friend. One victim, Jennifer Wu, a special education teacher at Meadowbrook, lost her entire life savings. Jennifer had been saving for a down payment on her first house, $32,000. Rachel stole every penny. And when Jennifer's credit card applications kept getting denied, when the bank called about suspicious activity, Rachel was right there playing the supportive friend. Oh my God, Jenny, that's so awful. Identity theft is everywhere these days. You should really be more careful with your information. The audacity. Now, you might be wondering how she got away with this for so long. The truth is, most identity theft goes unnoticed for months, sometimes years. Credit card companies don't always flag suspicious activity immediately. Victims often don't check their credit reports regularly. Rachel counted on this. She counted on people's trust, their busy lives, their reluctance to believe someone they knew could do this. But here's the thing about lies, especially big ones, they always catch up with you. In January 2018, everything started to unravel, and it started with something Rachel never saw coming. The IRS flagged multiple fraudulent tax returns filed from the same IP address, Rachel's home computer. She had gotten greedy, filed 17 fake tax returns in one weekend, claimed fake dependents, fake income, fake everything. Y'all, she was about to find out that you can manipulate people, but you can't manipulate the federal government. Before we get to how it all came crashing down, let's look at what Rachel built with stolen money. Financial investigators later calculated that between 2013 and 2018, Rachel Morrison stole approximately $473,000, almost $500,000. She bought a Mercedes-Benz C-Class, $48,000, paid cash. She rented a luxury apartment in downtown Riverside, $2,800 a month, her closet. Prosecutors counted 87 designer handbags, Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Hermes, some worth $5,000–$6,000 each, jewelry, watches, shoes that cost more than some people's monthly car payment. And this woman really posted it all online. Every purchase, every vacation, like she was daring someone to ask questions. Narcissists often can't help themselves. The stolen goods mean nothing without an audience to admire them. Rachel's entire sense of self-worth was tied to external validation. She needed people to see her living large, to envy her, to think she was special. What she didn't know was that investigators were screenshotting every single post, building a case, documenting her spending patterns, every single post. So what makes someone like Rachel Morrison? What creates a person capable of destroying dozens of lives without remorse? Forensic psychologist Dr. Patricia Lawson, who evaluated Rachel for the court, diagnosed her with narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial traits. In plain English, Rachel genuinely believed she was better than everyone else, that she deserved special treatment, that other people's feelings and financial security meant nothing compared to her wants. Dr. Lawson noted that Rachel showed zero empathy during their sessions. When asked how she felt about her victims, Rachel's response was chilling. They should have been more careful with their information. She blamed them, the people she stole from. She made herself the victim of their carelessness. The evaluation revealed something else. Rachel had been lying and manipulating since childhood. Her parents, when interviewed, admitted they'd made excuses for her behavior for years. Her mother said, "We thought she'd outgrow it. We thought once she became a teacher, the responsibility would mature her." Instead, being a teacher just gave her access to more victims. February 14, 2018. Valentine's Day. While Rachel was posting pictures of roses and champagne at an expensive restaurant, IRS Criminal Investigation Special Agent David Chen was sitting in his office, staring at a pattern that made his blood boil. 17 fraudulent tax returns, all filed within 72 hours, all requesting expedited refunds, all claiming similar fake deductions. Now get this, the total refund amount Rachel tried to claim, $89,000, from fake tax returns. Agent Chen ran the IP address, traced it to an apartment in Riverside. Then he started pulling threads. What he found was a web of fraud so extensive it would take investigators 6 months to fully document. Credit cards in 37 different names, all with billing addresses linked back to P.O. boxes Rachel controlled. Personal loans totaling $214,000. Auto loans. Student loans that weren't for any actual students. Y'all, this woman had created an entire criminal enterprise from her living room. But the IRS wasn't the only entity catching on. Remember Jennifer Wu, the special education teacher whose savings Rachel had stolen. On February 21, 2018, Jennifer was denied a mortgage. The bank told her she had outstanding debts, collections accounts. Her credit score had dropped 212 points. Jennifer knew immediately something was wrong. She'd been meticulous with her finances. She requested a full credit report. What she saw made her physically ill. 9 credit cards she'd never opened, 4 personal loans she'd never applied for, a car loan for a Mercedes she didn't own, total fraudulent debt, $68,000. Jennifer went straight to the police, filed a report, started the nightmare process of proving she was a victim of identity theft. And here's where things get interesting. The detective assigned to Jennifer's case, Detective Sarah Morales from Riverside PD, she's good at her job. She doesn't just take the report and move on. She starts digging. Detective Morales pulled Jennifer's bank records, credit card statements, and loan applications. She looked at where the fraudulent accounts were opened, the IP addresses used, the addresses where cards were sent. Then she asked Jennifer a simple question: who has access to your personal information? Jennifer gave her a list: family members, her accountant, HR at the school district, and her friend Rachel Morrison. March 2018. Three separate investigations started to converge without anyone realizing they were all about the same person. The IRS was investigating tax fraud. Riverside PD was investigating Jennifer Wu's identity theft. And the San Bernardino County District Attorney's Office had just received a complaint from Meadowbrook Elementary's Parent-Teacher Association. See, Rachel had been treasurer of the PTA. She handled fundraiser money, collected donations, managed the account. The PTA president, Maria Santos, noticed something odd when she tried to access the account to pay for the end-of-year field trip. The account was empty, $13,000. Gone. Money that was supposed to send third, fourth, and fifth graders to science camp. Rachel had spent it on a week in Chilum, and this woman had posted about it. Pictures on the beach with the caption, "Sometimes you just gotta treat yourself." Yeah, Rachel, with stolen money from 8-year-olds. April 3, 2018. A task force meeting at the Riverside County Sheriff's Department brought everyone together. IRS Special Agent David Chen, Detective Sarah Morales, District Attorney Investigator Thomas Park, an FBI agent specializing in identity theft crimes, and representatives from multiple banks and credit card companies. When they started comparing notes, the scope of Rachel's crimes became clear. 1 perpetrator, 37 identified victims, potentially dozens more who didn't know yet. The investigators made a decision. They weren't going to arrest Rachel immediately. They were going to watch her, document everything, build an airtight case. They were going to make sure she never saw freedom again. Meanwhile, Rachel had no idea her world was about to implode. She's out here living her best life. Spring break 2018, she goes to Paris. First-class flight, 5-star hotel, shopping on the Champs-Élysées. She posted 63 times in 8 days, every meal, every outfit, every landmark. Investigators documented it all. Back in California, they were executing search warrants on her bank accounts, her email, her cloud storage. What they found was staggering. Rachel kept spreadsheets, detailed records of whose identity she'd stolen, which credit cards belonged to which victim, payment due dates, credit limits. She organized her crimes like it was a business. Y'all, there were folders labeled with her victims' names, files full of their personal documents, social security cards, driver's licenses, birth certificates. She'd even scanned some victims' passports. The level of premeditation was insane. April 16, 2018, Monday morning. Rachel walked into Meadowbrook Elementary like it was any other day. Starbucks in hand, new Michael Kors bag over her shoulder. She had no idea that Principal Robert Martinez and 2 district investigators were waiting in his office. 8:47 a.m. Principal Martinez called Rachel to the office over the intercom. According to witness statements, Rachel seemed unconcerned. She actually joked with another teacher on the way, saying she hoped she wasn't in trouble for being late to a staff meeting last week. She walked into that office smiling. She left in handcuffs. April 16, 2018, 9:23 a.m. Detective Morales and her partner, Detective James Wung, were waiting in the parking lot. The district investigators had confronted Rachel about the missing PTA funds. She tried to deny it, said there must be some mistake. Then she tried to cry, said she'd been under financial stress. These investigators weren't having it. They told her the police were waiting outside, that she was going to be arrested, that she had the right to remain silent but that anything she said could be used against her. Rachel's response: she asked if she could fix her makeup first. I'm not even kidding. This woman is about to be arrested for felony fraud, and she's worried about how she'll look in her mugshot. Detective Morales read her Miranda rights at 9:23 a.m. Rachel Morrison, you're under arrest for identity theft, grand theft, forgery, and fraud. Rachel's face when she realized this was actually happening, priceless. The confidence drained away. The smile disappeared. Reality just slapped her across the face and she didn't know how to handle it. 11:15 a.m. Riverside Police Department interrogation room. Rachel sat across from Detective Morales and Detective Wong. She declined to have a lawyer present. First mistake. See, Rachel still thought she could talk her way out of this. Thought her charm would work on these seasoned detectives who'd seen every manipulation tactic in the book. Detective Morales started simple. Rachel, do you know why you're here? Rachel, there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I think someone might have used my identity too. Already lying. Detective Wong slid a folder across the table. Inside, bank statements showing deposits from fraudulent tax refunds into Rachel's account. Can you explain these deposits? Rachel looked at them. You could see her brain working, trying to come up with an explanation. Those might be, I do some consulting work, online marketing. Detective Morales pulled out another document, Rachel's spreadsheet, the one organizing all her victims. What kind of online marketing requires you to keep a file labeled Jennifer Wu Capital One Limit $15,000? Rachel's face went white. She asked for a lawyer. Second smart thing she did all day, but way too late. While Rachel sat in a holding cell, investigators executed a search warrant on her apartment. April 16, 2018, 2 p.m. A team of 6 investigators descended on Rachel's luxury apartment. What they found? Y'all, it was like a criminal command center mixed with a Neiman Marcus. In her home office, 3 laptops, 7 cell phones, 2 filing cabinets full of stolen documents, a printer and embossing machine for making fake IDs, blank check stock, credit card making equipment. This woman had a whole identity theft factory set up. In her bedroom closet, the 87 designer handbags prosecutors already knew about, hundreds of pieces of clothing with tags still attached, jewelry appraised at over $70,000, 12 pairs of designer shoes that cost more than $1,000 each. She had so much stuff, it took investigators 6 hours to photograph and catalog everything. The real gold mine was in Rachel's digital footprint. Forensic computer analyst Rebecca Torres spent 3 weeks going through Rachel's devices. Email accounts under fake names. Cloud storage with over 40 gigabytes of stolen personal information. Text messages that were straight-up confessions. Get this, Rachel had texted her friend, another teacher at a different school, about the fraud. The friend had texted, "Girl, you need to be careful, that's illegal." Rachel's response, "Lol, only if I get caught face blowing a kiss." She actually thought she wouldn't get caught. There were hundreds of messages like this. Rachel bragging about her scams, joking about her victims, giving advice to her friend on how to steal credit card information. That friend, by the way, immediately cooperated with investigators once she was contacted, turned over all the text messages, said she'd thought Rachel was joking and never believed she'd actually commit crimes. Once news of Rachel's arrest broke, victims started coming forward in waves. Teachers who'd noticed suspicious activity on their accounts but hadn't connected it to Rachel. Parents from the school who'd given Rachel their information for various school activities. Even family members. Rachel's own aunt, Patricia Morrison, filed a police report on April 19th. Rachel had stolen her identity, opened 3 credit cards, maxed them out. Her own family, y'all. This woman stole from her own blood. Patricia told Detective Morales through tears, "I helped raise her. I babysat her when she was little. I trusted her completely." Rachel destroyed her aunt's credit. Patricia was 63 years old, close to retirement. Her credit score dropped so much that her mortgage company nearly foreclosed on her house. The cruelty was unimaginable. As investigators dug deeper, they realized Rachel's crimes extended far beyond Riverside County. She'd stolen identities in 7 different California counties. She'd filed fraudulent tax returns in 12 states. She'd even used stolen identities to open business accounts in Nevada and Arizona. The FBI officially joined the investigation. Special Agent Linda Park, White Collar Crimes Division, told reporters, "This is one of the most extensive identity theft operations we've seen perpetrated by a single individual. One person. All this damage over 5 years, and she documented almost all of it on social media." April 20th, 2018, Rachel's bail hearing. She'd been in county jail for 4 days. No makeup, orange jumpsuit, hair in a messy ponytail. The transformation was stark. This wasn't the glamorous Instagram influencer anymore. The prosecutor, Deputy District Attorney Michael Chen, argued that Rachel was a flight risk. "Your Honor, the defendant has the skills and resources to assume false identities. She's demonstrated a complete disregard for the law. She has no ties to the community that would keep her here." Rachel's public defender, James Ortiz, argued for reasonable bail. "Your Honor, Miss Morrison has no prior criminal record. She's a respected educator with ties to this community. She's not a danger to society." Judge Patricia Wilson looked at the evidence, looked at Rachel, looked at the prosecutor's list of 53 felony charges. Her decision was swift. Bail is set at $500,000. Rachel actually gasped, started crying. The judge wasn't done. Additionally, the defendant will surrender her passport. She'll be fitted with a GPS monitoring device if bail is posted, and she is not to contact any of her alleged victims. Rachel couldn't make bail. She stayed in county jail, where she belonged. Over the next 3 months, as investigators continued to uncover more crimes, the charges against Rachel kept multiplying. May 2018, 18 additional counts of identity theft. June 2018, 22 counts of grand theft. July 2018, 15 counts of forgery and 12 counts of fraud. By August 2018, Rachel Morrison faced a total of 53 felony charges. If convicted on all counts, she was looking at over 40 years in prison. 40 years. She was 32. Do the math. She'd be 72 years old before she even had a chance at parole. While Rachel sat in jail, her victims were trying to rebuild their lives. According to victim impact statements filed with the court, Jennifer Wu developed anxiety and depression. She had to take a leave of absence from teaching. "I don't trust anyone anymore," she wrote. "Every time someone asks for my information, even at a doctor's office, I panic. Rachel didn't just steal my money. She stole my sense of security." Maria Santos, the PTA president, had to tell parents that the science camp trip was canceled, that the money their kids had raised through bake sales and car washes was gone. Can you imagine having to look at those kids and explain that an adult they trusted stole from them? One parent wrote in a victim statement, "My daughter asked me why Miss Morrison would steal from kids. I didn't have an answer." How do you explain that level of selfishness to a 9-year-old? Rachel's case made national news. Glamorous teacher's secret life of crime. Instagram influencer accused of stealing $500,000. Beauty and the thief. Teacher's double life exposed. The media ate it up. Here was this beautiful woman who seemed to have it all, and underneath, a criminal mastermind. Rachel's Instagram account, which had 43,000 followers, became a crime scene. People combed through every post looking for clues. Comments flooded in. "I can't believe I envied her lifestyle. It was all stolen." "Those designer bags are evidence of someone else's ruined credit." "She belongs in prison." The school district released a statement saying they were cooperating fully with law enforcement and offering support services to affected families and staff. Meadowbrook Elementary had to bring in counselors. Teachers were traumatized. Parents were angry. Rachel had damaged an entire community. In September 2018, the court ordered a full psychological evaluation. Dr. Patricia Lawson, a forensic psychologist with 20 years of experience, spent 12 hours interviewing Rachel over the course of 6 sessions. Her report was damning. Miss Morrison displays classic narcissistic personality disorder with strong antisocial traits. She shows no genuine remorse for her actions. She is unable to empathize with her victims. Dr. Lawson noted that Rachel spent most of their sessions talking about herself, about how the arrest had ruined her life, about how unfair the system was. Not once did she express genuine concern for the people she'd hurt. The evaluation included this chilling exchange. Dr. Lawson: how do you feel about the teachers whose identities you stole? Rachel: I feel bad that they didn't protect their information better. Dr. Lawson: do you feel responsible for their financial losses? Rachel: I mean, credit card companies have insurance. It's not like they actually lost money. She didn't get it. She still doesn't get it. Dr. Lawson's final assessment concluded that Rachel was a danger to society if left unsupervised, and that she would likely reoffend if given the opportunity. The prosecution would use this report to devastating effect at trial. October 2018. Forensic accountant David Ramirez was brought in to track every dollar Rachel had stolen and spent. This wasn't just about the criminal case. This was about restitution, making sure victims could get at least some of their money back. David told reporters later that this was the most complex case he'd worked in his 15-year career. Rachel had moved money through 17 different bank accounts. She'd opened accounts under fake business names. She'd even created a fake nonprofit organization to launder some of the funds. David had to trace every transaction, every credit card charge, every cash withdrawal, every wire transfer. His final report ran 347 pages. The total amount stolen: $473,216. But here's the thing, Rachel had spent almost all of it. The Mercedes, she'd crashed it and didn't have insurance. Total loss. The designer bags, some were fake. Some were real but depreciated in value once used. The jewelry. A lot of it was still in evidence storage, but even if liquidated, it'd maybe bring in 50 grand. The victims were never going to get their money back. Not really. Meanwhile, digital forensic analyst Rebecca Torres continued to mine Rachel's electronic devices for evidence. And boy, did she find it. Rachel had been sloppy. She'd used her personal laptop for fraud, hadn't used a VPN or any anonymization tools. For someone who thought she was so smart, she'd made rookie mistakes. Rebecca found browser history showing Rachel researching how long for identity theft prosecution, deleted emails to credit card companies using stolen identities, photo metadata proving Rachel took pictures of her victims' documents, Google search history including best states to avoid extradition. Y'all, she'd literally Googled whether she could flee to a country without extradition treaties. She'd looked up countries that don't extradite to the U.S., had researched how to get a fake passport. She knew exactly what she was doing. Rebecca also recovered deleted text messages between Rachel and an unknown contact saved in her phone as J. These texts revealed something investigators hadn't known. Rachel had a potential accomplice. Remember how I said Rachel had texted a friend about her crimes? That friend was Jasmine Park, a teacher at Mountain View High School in San Bernardino. And it turned out Jasmine wasn't just passively listening to Rachel brag. November 2018. FBI Special Agent Linda Park interviewed Jasmine. At first, Jasmine tried to play innocent, said she'd thought Rachel was joking, that she'd never taken her seriously. Then Special Agent Park showed her the text messages. Messages where Jasmine asked Rachel for advice on stealing credit card information. Messages where Rachel walked Jasmine through the process of opening fraudulent accounts. Messages where Jasmine thanked Rachel for the tips and said she'd made $3,000 this month. Jasmine's face went pale. She realized she was about to be arrested too. She asked for immunity in exchange for cooperation. The FBI said no, but they did offer a plea deal if she testified against Rachel. Jasmine took it. December 2018. Rachel's attorney, James Ortiz, sat down with her to discuss plea options. The prosecution was offering a deal, plead guilty to 20 counts, serve 15 years with possibility of parole after 10. Most defense attorneys would tell their client to take that deal, with 53 charges and overwhelming evidence. 15 years was generous. Rachel refused. She actually told her attorney, "I'll take my chances with a jury. Once they see me, hear my story, they'll understand." This woman genuinely believed that her looks and charm would work on a jury. James Ortiz later told colleagues that Rachel was the most delusional client he'd ever represented. He tried to explain that juries don't care how attractive you are when there's a mountain of evidence proving you stole from teachers and children. Rachel didn't want to hear it. She wanted to go to trial. She wanted to tell her side of the story. Huge mistake. January 2019. Deputy District Attorney Michael Chen began preparing his witnesses for trial. He had 37 victims ready to testify. He had investigators, forensic accountants, digital analysts, and psychology experts. He had Jasmine Park, the accomplice who'd turned state's witness. Michael told his team, "This case is going to be a marathon. We need to pace ourselves. We need to make the jury feel what these victims felt." Each victim met with Michael individually. He helped them prepare their victim impact statements, helped them understand what the defense might ask. Many of the victims cried during these prep sessions. Reliving what Rachel had done to them was traumatic. Jennifer Wu told Michael, "I just want her to look me in the eye. I want her to hear how she destroyed my life and not be able to look away." Michael made sure Jennifer would get that chance. James Ortiz knew he had an almost impossible case. The evidence was overwhelming. His client was unsympathetic and refused to show remorse. She insisted on testifying despite every attorney's advice not to. So what do you do when you're defending the indefensible? You attack the process. James decided his strategy would be: argue that some of the evidence was obtained improperly, suggest that Rachel was the victim of an abusive relationship, claim that Rachel had a shopping addiction that was a mental illness requiring treatment, not prison. Hope that one juror felt sympathetic enough to hang the jury. It was a terrible strategy, but when your client refuses every plea deal and insists on going to trial, you work with what you've got. February 11th, 2019. Jury selection began for the People versus Rachel Morrison. It took 3 days to seat 12 jurors and 4 alternates. The prosecution wanted jurors who'd been victims of financial crimes, who understood the impact of identity theft. The defense wanted anyone who might be charmed by Rachel's looks and personality. The final jury, 7 women, 5 men, ages ranging from 28 to 67, mix of ethnicities and professions. 3 had been victims of identity theft themselves. The defense had lost before the trial even started. February 14th, 2019. Exactly 1 year after the IRS first flagged Rachel's fraudulent tax returns, Judge Patricia Wilson presided, the same judge who denied Rachel reasonable bail. 9 a.m. The courtroom was packed. Victims filled the gallery. Media in the back, court artists sketching. Judge Wilson, the people of the state of California versus Rachel Morrison. Are both sides ready? Prosecution. Ready, Your Honor. Defense. Ready, Your Honor. And just like that, Rachel Morrison's reckoning began. Deputy DA Michael Chen approached the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, over the next few weeks, you're going to hear about betrayal, about trust destroyed, about a woman who looked her victims in the eye, called them friends, and then systematically destroyed their financial lives. Rachel Morrison is a thief, but she's not your typical thief. She didn't break into homes or rob banks. She did something much more insidious. She stole identities. She stole futures. She stole peace of mind." Michael laid it out beautifully. He told the jury about each victim category: the fellow teachers who trusted her, the parents who gave her information for school activities, the family members who never imagined she'd betray them. "The evidence will show that Rachel Morrison stole $473,000 over 5 years, that she committed 53 separate felonies, and that she showed absolutely no remorse. No remorse. She spent your money, and yes, it's your money because these victims are taxpayers, they're your neighbors, they're your children's teachers. She spent this money on luxury goods while her victims struggled. Michael showed the jury side-by-side photos. Rachel in designer clothes in Paris. Jennifer Wu's denial letter for a mortgage. The evidence doesn't lie. Rachel Morrison is guilty of every single charge, and we will prove it beyond any reasonable doubt. James Ortiz did his best. Ladies and gentlemen, my client Rachel Morrison is not the monster the prosecution wants you to believe she is. She's a sick woman, a woman suffering from mental illness. You could feel the jury already tuning out. Rachel suffers from compulsive shopping disorder. It's a recognized mental health condition. She needed help, not handcuffs. James tried to paint Rachel as a victim of society's pressure on women to look perfect, as someone who'd been manipulated by a former boyfriend into committing crimes. Y'all, the prosecution had already debunked this. They had evidence Rachel was stealing before she'd even met the boyfriend James was trying to blame. We're not saying Rachel didn't make mistakes, but mistakes don't make someone a monster. We ask that you keep an open mind and remember that there are two sides to every story. It was weak and everyone knew it. The prosecution called their first witness, Jennifer Wu. Jennifer walked to the stand with visible anxiety. She'd been waiting over a year for this moment. She took the oath, sat down, looked directly at Rachel. Michael Chen, Miss Wu, how did you know the defendant, Jennifer? We worked together at Meadowbrook Elementary. We were friends, or I thought we were. Jennifer testified about how Rachel had offered to help her with her taxes, how Rachel had said she knew tricks to get bigger refunds, how Rachel had asked for Jennifer's social security number, date of birth, and mother's maiden name. Michael Chen, did you give her this information? Jennifer, yes, I trusted her. Michael introduced bank statements, credit card applications, loan documents, all with Jennifer's information and Rachel's handwriting. Jennifer testified about the day she was denied the mortgage, about discovering her credit was destroyed, about the months of fighting with credit bureaus and banks. I had to move back in with my parents at 34 years old because I couldn't afford rent and repair my credit at the same time. Rachel took away my independence, my dignity. Some jurors were crying. Rachel stared at the table. She couldn't even look at her victim. Over the next 3 days, the prosecution called victim after victim. Martha Rodriguez, the veteran teacher Rachel had worked with for 5 years. I let Rachel use my computer once because hers was broken. She must have accessed my saved passwords. Within a week, I had 3 credit cards I'd never opened. Patricia Morrison, Rachel's aunt. I helped raise this girl. I loved her like she was my own daughter, and she stole my identity. She ruined my retirement plans. I may have to work until I die because of what she did. Marcus Thompson, the ex-boyfriend. Rachel told me she loved me, that we were going to build a life together. The whole time, she was draining my bank account and forging my signature on loans. I was $25,000 in debt when we broke up. It took me 4 years to recover. Victim after victim, each one more heartbreaking than the last. Parents whose kids had to skip the science camp. Teachers who couldn't retire because their savings were gone. Friends who'd lost everything. 37 lives destroyed. Day 6 of trial. Rebecca Torres, the digital forensics analyst, took the stand. This was the testimony that would seal Rachel's fate. Rebecca walked the jury through every piece of digital evidence. The spreadsheets organizing Rachel's victims. The emails sent from stolen accounts. The text messages bragging about the scams. Michael Chen, Ms. Torres, in your professional opinion, do these records show planning and premeditation? Rebecca, absolutely. Ms. Morrison kept meticulous records. She planned each fraud carefully. This wasn't impulsive behavior. This was systematic criminal activity. Then Rebecca showed the jury Rachel's search history. How to avoid getting caught for identity theft. Statute of Limitations fraud California. Countries without extradition to USA. The jury's faces said it all. They were appalled. Michael Chen. Does this search history suggest someone who made mistakes, or someone who knew exactly what she was doing and tried to avoid consequences? Rebecca. She knew. She absolutely knew what she was doing was wrong and illegal. Day 8. Jasmine Park took the stand as the prosecution's star witness. Jasmine had taken a plea deal, 5 years probation in exchange for testimony. She walked in looking terrified. She knew every eye in that courtroom hated her, but she also knew testifying was her only shot at avoiding prison. Michael Chen. Miss Park, how do you know the defendant? Jasmine. We met at a teaching conference in 2016. We became friends. Michael Chen. Did the defendant ever discuss her financial crimes with you? Jasmine. Yes. She bragged about them. Jasmine testified that Rachel had taught her how to steal identities, had walked her through the process step by step. She read text messages aloud, messages where Rachel gave explicit instructions on fraud. One text from Rachel read, "It's easy money, girl. Teachers are trusting. They never check their credit reports. Take advantage." The jury looked disgusted. Michael Chen. Did you eventually participate in identity theft yourself? Jasmine. Yes, and I'm deeply ashamed. I've accepted responsibility for my crimes. Then came the defense's cross-examination. James Ortiz tried to discredit Jasmine, tried to suggest she was lying to save herself. But Jasmine had receipts. She had everything. The defense couldn't touch her. Day 9. Forensic accountant David Ramirez explained the money trail. He'd created visual aids for the jury, flow charts showing where money was stolen from and where it went. David. Miss Morrison stole from 37 victims. The money went into 17 different accounts she controlled. From there, it was spent on luxury goods, travel, and cash withdrawals. David showed receipts, designer store purchases, first-class flight bookings, hotel stays in luxury resorts, everything funded by stolen money. Michael Chen. Mr. Ramirez, how much of the stolen money has been recovered? David. Approximately $32,000 worth of assets that can be liquidated. That's less than 7% of the total stolen. 7%. Meaning the victims would never get their money back. The jury looked at Rachel with contempt. She pretended to take notes, avoiding everyone's eyes. Day 11. The defense began presenting their case. James Ortiz called a psychiatrist, Dr. Robert Manning, to testify about compulsive shopping disorder. It was a Hail Mary, the only play they had left. Dr. Manning testified that compulsive shopping is a real disorder, that people who suffer from it can't control their spending urges. James Ortiz. Could Miss Morrison's crimes be explained by this disorder? Dr. Manning. It's possible that her compulsive need to shop drove her to find ways to fund that compulsion. But on cross-examination, Michael Chen destroyed this theory. Michael Chen. Dr. Manning, does compulsive shopping disorder cause people to meticulously plan identity theft schemes? Dr. Manning. Well, no. Michael Chen. Does it cause people to keep detailed spreadsheets of their victims? Dr. Manning. Not typically. Michael Chen. Does it cause people to Google how to avoid getting caught? Dr. Manning. No, it doesn't. Game over. The defense's expert had just admitted that Rachel's actions showed planning and intent, not compulsive disorder. James Ortiz called several character witnesses, people who'd known Rachel before her arrest, former students, a neighbor, a yoga instructor. Each one was supposed to testify that Rachel was a good person who'd made mistakes. Instead, they made things worse. One former student testified, "Miss Morrison was always nice to me, but looking back, she did talk a lot about money and expensive things. She told us that pretty people have easier lives." Y'all, even her former students were throwing shade. The neighbor testified that Rachel had once asked to borrow his identity documents to help with a loan application. He'd said no. Smart man. The yoga instructor testified that Rachel always paid for classes with different credit cards. Sometimes 3 or 4 different cards would be declined before one worked. The defense was accidentally proving the prosecution's case. Day 14. Rachel Morrison took the stand in her own defense. James Ortiz had begged her not to, told her it would be a disaster. Rachel insisted. She believed she could charm the jury. This was about to be spectacular in the worst possible way. Rachel wore a conservative dress, minimal makeup, hair pulled back. She was trying to look humble and sympathetic. It wasn't working. James Ortiz started with softball questions. James, Rachel, tell the jury about your childhood. Rachel, I grew up in a loving home. My parents gave me everything I needed. I was a good student. I wanted to be a teacher since I was little. So far, so good. Basic background. James, when did your financial problems begin? Rachel, when I started teaching. The salary wasn't enough to live the life I'd been used to. I started using credit cards. It spiraled out of control. Rachel tried to paint herself as someone who'd made mistakes, who'd gotten in over her head. But then Michael Chen stood up for cross-examination. This is where everything fell apart. Michael Chen smiled. He'd been waiting for this moment. Michael, Miss Morrison, you testified that your salary wasn't enough. What was your starting salary at Meadowbrook Elementary? Rachel, $48,000. Michael, and how much were you spending per month? Rachel, I'm not sure exactly. Michael, let me help you. According to bank records, you spent an average of $12,000 per month. That's $144,000 per year. Is that correct? Rachel, I guess so. Michael, did it ever occur to you to simply spend less money? Rachel, it's not that simple. Michael, actually it is. Most people live within their means. Why couldn't you? Rachel didn't have an answer. She looked flustered. Michael, Miss Morrison, you kept detailed spreadsheets of your victims. Can you explain that? Rachel, I was trying to keep track of my debts. Michael, these weren't your debts. They were fraudulent accounts you opened in other people's names, correct? Rachel, I was confused. She was lying and everyone knew it. Michael, you Googled how to avoid getting caught for identity theft. Were you confused when you did that? Rachel, I don't remember that. Michael, you also Googled countries without extradition to USA. Were you planning to flee? Rachel, no, I was just curious. Y'all, she was falling apart on the stand. Michael, let's talk about Jennifer Wu. She was your friend, correct? Rachel, yes. Michael, you stole her identity and destroyed her credit. Do you remember that? Rachel, I didn't mean to hurt her. Michael, but you did hurt her, intentionally. You took her information and used it to open fraudulent accounts. That wasn't an accident, that was a choice. Correct, Rachel. I guess so. Michael Chen continued to dismantle every lie Rachel had told. Michael, you testified that a former boyfriend pressured you into committing crimes. Which boyfriend was that? Rachel, Marcus Thompson. Michael, the same Marcus Thompson who testified that you stole from him. Rachel, he was controlling. Michael, Miss Morrison, the evidence shows you were committing identity theft before you even met Mr. Thompson. Were you lying just now when you blamed him? Rachel's lawyer objected. Judge Wilson overruled. Rachel, I must have been confused about the timeline. Michael, or you're lying to avoid responsibility. James Ortiz. Objection. Judge Wilson. Sustained. Rephrase, Mr. Chen. Michael, let me ask this. You're not taking responsibility for any of your actions, are you? Rachel, I am taking responsibility. Michael, really? Because you've blamed a mental disorder, a boyfriend, financial pressure, and now confusion. You haven't once said, I chose to steal from people. Have you? Rachel was silent. Michael, you posted photos of yourself in Paris on Instagram while Jennifer Wu was being denied a mortgage. Do you remember that? Rachel, I don't remember every post. Michael, you posted 63 times in 8 days. You documented your stolen luxury lifestyle. You showed off. You bragged, didn't you? Rachel, I wasn't thinking about it that way. Michael, how were you thinking about it? Rachel, I just wanted people to think I was successful. Y'all, she just admitted it. She cared more about looking successful than about the people she destroyed. Michael, 37 victims, Miss Morrison. 37 people whose lives you ruined so you could look successful on Instagram. Was it worth it? Rachel started crying. Rachel, no, no, it wasn't worth it. Too little, too late. James Ortiz tried to do damage control on redirect examination. James, Rachel, are you remorseful for what you've done? Rachel, yes, I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. James, if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently? Rachel, I would have asked for help. I would have gotten therapy for my shopping problem. But the jury wasn't buying it. You could see it on their faces. Rachel had just spent an hour making excuses and blaming others. Now she was trying to seem remorseful, not credible. Day 15. The prosecution called Dr. Patricia Lawson for rebuttal. Dr. Lawson had evaluated Rachel. Her testimony would counter the defense's mental illness narrative. Michael Chen, Dr. Lawson, you evaluated the defendant. What were your findings, Dr. Lawson? Miss Morrison has narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial traits. She's manipulative, lacks empathy, and shows no genuine remorse. Michael Chen, does she have compulsive shopping disorder, Dr. Lawson? No. Her spending was a symptom of her narcissism. She wanted to appear wealthy and successful. She felt entitled to a lifestyle she couldn't afford, so she stole to fund it. Michael Chen, is she capable of controlling her behavior, Dr. Lawson? Absolutely. The meticulous planning, the detailed record-keeping, the attempts to avoid detection, all of this shows clear capacity for control and intent. Dr. Lawson basically told the jury that Rachel was a manipulative narcissist who knew exactly what she was doing. Michael Chen, in your professional opinion, would the defendant reoffend if given the opportunity? Dr. Lawson, yes. Without significant intervention and supervision, I believe she would absolutely reoffend. She sees herself as special, as exempt from rules that apply to others. The jury needed to hear that. Day 16. Closing arguments. Michael Chen delivered a masterclass in prosecution. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 weeks, you've heard testimony from 37 victims. You've seen evidence of 53 separate felonies. You've watched the defendant lie on the stand. Rachel Morrison is not a victim. She's a predator. She targeted kind people, trusting people. She looked them in the eye, called them friends, and destroyed their lives. Michael walked the jury through each category of crime. She committed identity theft, not once, not twice, but 37 times. She committed grand theft, stealing amounts ranging from hundreds to tens of thousands of dollars. She committed forgery, signing other people's names on loan applications, credit card applications, tax returns. She committed fraud, lying to banks, credit card companies, the IRS. 53 felonies. $473,000 stolen. 5 years of systematic criminal activity. Michael paused, looked at each juror. The defendant wants you to believe she's a victim of mental illness, that she couldn't control herself, but the evidence shows otherwise. She kept spreadsheets. She planned each theft. She Googled how to avoid getting caught. She researched countries without extradition. This was not impulsive behavior. This was calculated criminal enterprise. Michael's voice grew stronger. Jennifer Wu can't buy a house because Rachel destroyed her credit. Patricia Morrison might lose her home because Rachel stole from her own aunt. Marcus Thompson spent years recovering from the financial devastation Rachel caused. Children didn't get to go to science camp because Rachel stole their fundraiser money. The defense wants you to feel sorry for Rachel Morrison, to believe she deserves a second chance. But what about her victims? Don't they deserve justice? Michael looked directly at Rachel. The defendant sat in this courtroom for 3 weeks and never once genuinely apologized. Never once took full responsibility. She blamed everyone but herself. Ladies and gentlemen, your verdict sends a message. It tells victims of financial crimes that they matter. It tells predators like Rachel Morrison that beauty and charm can't save you from the consequences of your actions. We've proven every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt. The evidence is overwhelming. The defendant's guilt is clear. We ask that you return guilty verdicts on all 53 counts. Thank you." Michael sat down. The courtroom was silent. Some victims were crying. James Ortiz stood for the defense's closing argument. He knew he was fighting a losing battle. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is a tragedy for everyone involved, for the victims who were hurt, and for Rachel Morrison, who made terrible mistakes." He tried to humanize Rachel, to make the jury see her as a person who'd gone down the wrong path, not as a monster. Rachel is not evil, she's flawed. She made bad choices driven by pressure to appear successful. James acknowledged the evidence against Rachel. He had no choice. Yes, she committed crimes. We're not denying that. But the question is why, and what should the consequence be? Rachel needs help, not just punishment. She needs therapy, supervision, and a chance to make amends. Y'all, even James sounded like he didn't believe what he was saying. "We ask that you consider the totality of circumstances. Consider that Rachel has no prior criminal record. Consider that she's acknowledged her mistakes." But she hadn't acknowledged her mistakes. She'd lied on the stand, blamed others, shown no real remorse. "Please consider a verdict that allows for rehabilitation, not just retribution." "Thank you." James sat down. The closing argument had lasted barely 10 minutes. The prosecution's had lasted 45. Judge Wilson gave the jury their instructions. She explained each charge, what the prosecution had to prove, what constitutes reasonable doubt. "Ladies and gentlemen, you must consider each count separately. The defendant is innocent until proven guilty on each individual charge. You must base your verdict solely on the evidence presented in this courtroom, not on sympathy, not on prejudice, only on the facts. If you find the defendant guilty, sentencing will be determined later. Your job is only to determine guilt or innocence on each count." Judge Wilson looked at the jury seriously. "This is a serious responsibility. Take your time, be thorough, and reach a verdict that you can stand behind." At 3:47 p.m. on March 4, 2019, the jury retired to begin deliberations. Rachel's fate was now in their hands. In high-profile cases like this, jury deliberation can take days or even weeks. But in Rachel's case, the jury had mountains of evidence, clear testimony, and a defendant who'd lied on the stand. Day 1 of deliberations. The jury requested to review the financial records and Rachel's spreadsheets. Day 2. They requested to hear Jennifer Wu's testimony read back. On Day 3, March 7, 2019, at 11:23 a.m., the jury sent a note to Judge Wilson. They'd reached a verdict. Y'all, the courtroom erupted. Victims rushed back. Media crews scrambled. Rachel was brought back from the holding cell. In less than 3 full days of deliberation, the jury had decided Rachel Morrison's fate. Fast verdicts usually mean clear guilt. March 7, 2019, 2:15 p.m. Judge Wilson, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?" Jury foreperson. "We have, Your Honor." The court clerk took the verdict forms, handed them to Judge Wilson. Judge Wilson reviewed them silently. Her face revealed nothing. She handed them back to the clerk. Judge Wilson, "The defendant will rise." Rachel stood. James Ortiz stood beside her. This was the moment. "Judge Wilson, the clerk will read the verdicts." Court clerk. "In the matter of the People versus Rachel Ann Morrison, case number CR 2018-04167, as to count 1, identity theft in violation of Penal Code Section 530.5, we the jury find the defendant guilty." Court clerk continued. "As to count 2, identity theft, we find the defendant guilty. As to count 3, guilty. Count 4, guilty." Y'all, the clerk read all 53 counts. Every single one guilty, guilty, guilty. Rachel started crying. Not tears of remorse, tears of disbelief. She actually looked shocked, like she genuinely believed her looks and charm would save her. They didn't. Judge Wilson polled the jury. Each juror confirmed the verdicts were accurate. Judge Wilson, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your service. This was a long and complex trial. You performed your civic duty admirably. You are dismissed." The jury filed out. Several of them looked at Rachel with expressions of disgust. Judge Wilson, the defendant is remanded into custody pending sentencing. Sentencing is scheduled for April 15, 2019. We are adjourned. The gavel came down. Rachel was handcuffed and led away. As she passed the gallery, several victims called out, "Jennifer Wu, look at me, Rachel." Rachel didn't look. She kept her head down, coward to the end. Outside the courthouse, victims spoke to the press. Jennifer Wu, speaking through tears, "This doesn't give me my money back. It doesn't restore my credit, but it gives me something. It tells me that the system works. That people like Rachel can't just destroy lives without consequences." Patricia Morrison, "I never wanted this for her. I wanted her to get help, but she refused to take responsibility. Maybe prison will finally teach her that actions have consequences." Patricia was crying. Despite everything Rachel had done, this was still her niece. Maria Santos, the PTA president, spoke about the children. "I hope those kids learn something from this. That beauty and charm don't make you a good person. That character matters. That choices have consequences." April 15, 2019. Rachel Morrison's sentencing hearing. Judge Wilson presided over a packed courtroom. 37 victims had submitted impact statements. 14 of them chose to read them in court. This was their chance to face Rachel and tell her what she'd done to them. Jennifer Wu went first. "Rachel, we were friends. I invited you to my birthday parties. I confided in you. I trusted you with my most personal information. You destroyed my life. I lost the house I'd been saving for. I developed anxiety so bad I couldn't teach. I moved back in with my parents in my 30s. But worse than the money, worse than the credit damage. You destroyed my ability to trust people. Every new person I meet, I wonder if they're like you, if they're going to hurt me. I hope you spend a very long time in prison thinking about what you've done." Patricia Morrison, Rachel's aunt, "I changed your diapers. I taught you to ride a bike. I was there for every birthday, every graduation, every important moment. And you repaid me by stealing my identity, by jeopardizing my home, by destroying my retirement. I don't know who you are anymore, Rachel. The girl I helped raise wouldn't have done this. I forgive you, because that's what family does, but I can never trust you again." Martha Rodriguez, veteran teacher, "You sat in the teacher's lounge with us. You ate lunch with us. You complained about low pay just like the rest of us. We were all struggling on the same salary. But instead of living within your means, you stole from us, from your colleagues, from people in the same position as you. Teachers are supposed to be role models. You betrayed that. You betrayed all of us. You don't deserve to ever teach again." And she never would. Michael Chen addressed the court. "Your Honor, the people recommend the maximum sentence on each count to run consecutively." Translation: Michael was asking for the harshest possible punishment. Miss Morrison showed no remorse throughout this trial. She lied on the stand. She blamed her victims for their own victimization. She has demonstrated that she's a danger to society. Michael cited the psychological evaluation. Dr. Lawson's conclusion that Rachel would reoffend. The defense will argue for leniency, for rehabilitation. But Your Honor, how can you rehabilitate someone who doesn't believe she did anything wrong? These 37 victims deserve justice. The community deserves protection from predators like Miss Morrison. We ask for the maximum, 42 years in state prison. 42 years. James Ortiz made his final argument for Rachel. "Your Honor, Miss Morrison is a first-time offender. She has no history of violence. She's a young woman who made terrible mistakes." James tried everything. He cited her age, her potential for rehabilitation, her remorse, though she'd shown none. "We ask for mercy, for a sentence that balances punishment with the possibility of redemption." James recommended 15 years with credit for time served. Judge Wilson: "Does the defendant wish to make a statement?" Rachel stood. This was her last chance to show genuine remorse. Rachel had prepared a statement. She read from a piece of paper, her voice shaking. "Your Honor, I want to apologize to everyone I've hurt. I know I made terrible mistakes. I let materialism and vanity control my life. Rachel continued with her prepared speech. It sounded rehearsed, hollow. I understand now how much pain I caused. If I could go back and change everything, I would. But then Rachel went off script. I don't think I'm a bad person. I just made bad choices. I hope that someday people can see that I'm more than my worst mistakes. Y'all, she still didn't get it. Even now, at sentencing, she was more concerned with how people saw her than with the damage she'd done. Judge Wilson's expression hardened. Judge Patricia Wilson looked at Rachel Morrison. Miss Morrison, I've presided over many criminal cases in my career. I've seen defendants from all walks of life. Rich, poor, educated, uneducated. But rarely have I seen someone as entitled and unremorseful as you. This is the reality check the whole nation waited for. Judge Wilson continued. You sat in this courtroom for weeks and blamed everyone but yourself. You blamed mental illness, an illness you don't have. You blamed a boyfriend. You blamed financial pressure. You lied on the stand. You tried to manipulate this jury just like you manipulated your victims. Judge Wilson was not holding back. You seem to believe that because you're attractive, because you can be charming, that you deserve special treatment. You don't. The victims in this case are hardworking people, teachers, parents, family members. They trusted you. And you exploited that trust for designer handbags and Instagram photos. You stole from children, from your own family, from people who considered you a friend. Judge Wilson looked at the sentencing guidelines. The prosecution has asked for 42 years. The defense has asked for 15. The courtroom was dead silent. Everyone waited. Miss Morrison, your crimes were numerous, calculated, and cruel. You showed no mercy to your victims. They were simply means to an end for you. Judge Wilson's voice grew stronger. This court sentences you to 34 years in state prison on the identity theft and fraud charges, an additional 6 years on the grand theft charges, to run consecutively. 40 years total. Rachel gasped, started sobbing uncontrollably. Judge Wilson wasn't done. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, $473,216. You will never be allowed to work in education again, and upon release, you will serve 10 years of supervised parole. Miss Morrison, you thought your beauty would save you, but in this courtroom we don't care about appearances. We care about justice. Beauty doesn't exempt you from consequences. I hope you spend the next 40 years thinking about the lives you destroyed, about the choices you made, and about the person you became. Judge Wilson banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. Rachel was sobbing so hard she could barely stand. Bailiffs had to lift her from the chair. As she was led out of the courtroom in shackles, reality was finally hitting her. 40 years. She was 32. She'd be 72 when released. In the gallery, victims embraced. Some were crying tears of relief. Others looked exhausted. Jennifer Wu told a reporter, 40 years feels right. She took years from us. Now she'll lose years of her life. Justice had been served. Rachel Morrison is currently incarcerated at the California Institution for Women in Chino, California. Her inmate number is W98247. She's classified as a minimum security prisoner since she's not violent. According to public records, Rachel works in the prison library, earns about 12 cents an hour. She's filed 2 appeals. Both were denied. Her earliest possible parole date is March 2049. She'll be 60 years old. In prison, Rachel is reportedly isolated. She's not well liked by other inmates. Word of her crimes spread. Stealing from teachers and children doesn't make you popular in prison. She's tried to maintain her appearance as much as possible given prison limitations. Still obsessed with how she looks, even now. A prison counselor who spoke anonymously said Rachel still doesn't show genuine remorse. She views herself as the victim of an unfair system. She still doesn't get it. The victims of Rachel Morrison's crimes are still recovering. Jennifer Wu eventually bought a house. It took her 4 years to repair her credit, but she did it. She left teaching, though. The experience destroyed her love for the profession. Patricia Morrison, Rachel's aunt, did manage to keep her home. Family and friends helped her through the financial crisis. But she told reporters she still cries when she thinks about what her niece did. The PTA fundraiser money was eventually replaced through community donations. The kids got to go to science camp a year late. Marcus Thompson, the ex-boyfriend, recovered financially. He's married now, happy. But he said the experience taught him to be more careful about who he trusts. Several victims formed a support group for identity theft survivors. They meet monthly to share experiences and coping strategies. As for restitution, Rachel pays $25 per month from her prison wages. At that rate, it'll take approximately 1,576 years to repay the $473,216 she stole. The victims will never see their money again. The case of Rachel Morrison is a stark reminder that beauty, charm, and confidence can't shield you from the consequences of your actions. For 5 years, Rachel thought she was untouchable. She thought her looks would always get her what she wanted. She was wrong. 37 victims, 53 felonies, $473,000 stolen, 40 years in prison. That's the real price of vanity and entitlement. Judge Wilson's words echo, "Beauty doesn't exempt you from consequences." This case matters because it shows that the justice system can work, that victims can get their day in court, that even privileged, attractive criminals can be held accountable. It also matters as a warning. Check who you trust with your information. Monitor your accounts. Don't assume that someone's appearance or charm means they're trustworthy. Rachel Morrison looked like a successful, put-together professional. Underneath, she was a predator. Before we go, I want to acknowledge the real victims of this case. 37 people whose lives were upended by someone they trusted. Jennifer Wu, Patricia Morrison, Marcus Thompson, Maria Santos, and all the others whose names we didn't have time to mention. Their courage in coming forward helped ensure that Rachel Morrison faced justice. Identity theft ruins lives. Remember, folks, pretty faces are everywhere, but beautiful souls, those are rare. Look for substance, value character, and never ever trust someone just because they look good on Instagram.